based around shared heroin addiction with the wandering Velvet Underground singer and iconic Warhol darling, Nico.
And all the times I had.
Even Marquis Smith was slightly taken aback.
I remember when Nico was there and a bit weird walking down Prestwick Street to see Nico doing a shopping, you know, but she was staying with him in his flat.
In John's mind, it made sense to follow up Living at the Edge of Reason with Nico by hanging out in crackpot TV commercials for Sugar Puffs with the Honey Monster.
It's tummy time.
Love my honey.
This is the first tummy time commercial in which Johnny Clarke and Honey Monster will be demonstrating how fabulous Sugar Puffs are.
Monster-rific.
The funny thing about the 80s for me with you, John, is that the two things that happened that have been boiled down to be the sound bites, almost like you were writing a piece of fiction that you made real, that it would be Nico and Sugar Puff's Honey Monster.
They sound like two fulfilled ambitions, don't they? But I just got lucky in both cases, I'm afraid.
Let's go and make a pudding with them in the studio kitchen.
Rolling. Andy Warhol would have understood. He wouldn't have seen any conflict there.
In the 1980s, punk was the past, and as the punk poet, he was now officially out of time. His reaction was to stick to his mad mod speed-reading guns, and the fashions of the time, the shoulder pads and the shiny new romantics weren't going to change his mind.
This disc concerns those pouting prima donnas found within the swelling J. Arthur ranks of the sex.
The purest poetry establishment viewed him, if at all, with suspicion. His nefarious mixing with the music world, the bloody sunglasses and the hipster uniform meant he was not as such a poet, but a sort of debauched comedian, and there were still no published Cooper Clarke books. Jules Denby, one of the UK's first female performance poets, was inspired to write and perform by John Cooper Clarke.
What people forget about John is they see the quirky image, which he's kept, and they see the funniness. What they're not seeing is the brilliant use of language. And that, I think, is something which is a great shame. And John has written some excoriatingly brilliant pieces of serious poetry. I mean, Beasley Street is a masterpiece.
She was more of a man than he'll ever be, the one he couldn't beat. A messy job, leave it to me, I tear up Beasley Street, it just isn't what it isn't.
That is not appreciated by, you know, the literary establishment, who like to view anybody who has the ability to perform their poetry, or just basically read their poetry aloud really well, as second-rate.
In recent years, now that post-punk sound and idealism has entered the mainstream, a new generation of fans rediscovered him as a kind of shadowy lost legend. He's been a mentor to literate, facetious Sheffield popsters, Arctic Monkeys. An early rumour was that Cooper Clarke actually wrote their lyrics, and they print his poems on the album sleeves.
Last night these two bouncers, and one of them's alright, the other one's a scary, and his way or no way, totalitarian. He's
also influenced fellow Sheffield group The Reverend and the Makers, who recorded a track with him. John McClure is lead singer in the band.
Edgy Clisfield terraced houses, Lilo Lils, unfaithful spouses, dirty weekends by the sea and stains on sheets in B&Bs.
The rain whips the promenade, it drips on ships, they turn to lard. I'd send a card if I had a pen. I mustn't go down to the sea again.
I think our generation, there's a lot of like hip-hop, isn't there, and rap and stuff like that, and things of like with any like lyrical content seem to have evaporated in some way, and then people started to search for a bit of a meaning in the word. You link to things, don't you, and trace things back, and all roads seem to lead to Johnny Clarke, where I were looking. It's like when I listen to him, what he's talking about, it's like, that's my life, that's the people I know.
Cooper Clarke has toured Australia with Lily Allen. He's definitely a gabby godfather to Lily and her way of chatting up an audience using personal experience and vigilant humour.
Sometimes I find myself sitting back and reminiscing, especially when I have to watch other people kissing. And I remember when
my dad introduced me to him years ago, and I was quite scared of him. He's quite a funny-looking character. And then I did a gig with Joe Strummer at the LA2 for like some sort of poetry week or something, and me and Joe sang together and he introed the night. I think it's really funny, you know, that whole kind of Manchester scene is such an integral part of a lot of sort of poetry, I suppose, modern culture. Yeah, I just think he's a great guy. He's very clever and very intelligent.
The ultimate confirmation of John Cooper Clarke as timeless British classic, as original otherworldly mind, was when his poem Evidently Chicken Town turned up in an episode of the modern mob classic, The Sopranos. Don Letts again.
I remember hearing Evidently Chicken Town in one of the episodes of Sopranos and having an immense sense of pride, and I wasn't quite sure why I had that pride, but it was great to know that, you know, this poetry, music, whatever you want to call it, connected with these people. They thought it worthwhile to stick in their soundtrack, because everything in The Sopranos, you know, has been thought about. I think that Sopranos thing was a moment of crowning glory and recognition that he was bigger than a Manchester phenomenon.
Evidently Chicken Town.
Cooper Clarke is still not a published poet, but he's reclaimed his role as dazed, dazzling, psyched-up court jester to those who like having him around to liven up their own shows. He'll support the new band of the class's Mick Jones, Silicon Carbon. He'll appear before Damon Albarn's The Good, the Bad and the Queen. And to this day, there is no better support act for the Fall.
America for the Nobel Prize. I mean, that's the country we live in, Paul.
But you think he deserves to be given?
Of course I do. Yeah, he should be the poet laureate, shouldn't he? I mean, if I would say that, I'm not just saying it.
John Cooper Clarke is loved and wanted again, but he's always on his toes, ready for the moment he once more slips or is pushed out of fashion, back into the shadows. Sometimes he seems to orchestrate his own disappearing act, just in case too much time in the limelight might spoil his mind, ruin his timing, blur his vision, and bring him down to ordinary, explainable earth alongside the rest of us.
You can't really prepare for any of it. That's why people who get famous go crackers. And if you are prepared for it, you must be some kind of monster. You know what I mean? Oh, yes, there must be a voice in your head. Oh, yes, I deserve this.
Why is there an unbelievable tradition of pulling yourself apart at the moment of when you might just be thinking I might have pulled something off? Is that something that's part of your character in a way?
What, do I do that?
Self-deprecation.
Do I do that then?
You do an awful lot of it, John.
Really?
Yeah.
I always thought I'd big myself up to some degree. No, really, I'm funny, isn't it? You know, I had an idea I was a right big-headed sod. I don't know, it's manners or something, I don't know.
Our days were numbered and the nights were spent in a rent-free furnished oxygen tent where a robot chef served up moonbeams.
How would I like to be remembered? Remember me as a good thing. Who said that? Diana Ross? I can't argue with that.
You're a missing link between Diana Ross and Charles Baudelaire.
You're right, go on then. But Paul, where did our love go? Please. Stop, in the name of love. That could be the last line, couldn't it?
Next time I see a translucent face, I remember it from outer space. Thank you.
The Bar of Salford was presented by Paul Morley, the producer was Elizabeth Alker, and it was an all-out production.